once you designate a criminal organization as a terrorist organization, now the intelligence agencies can take their gloves off and actually help law enforcement. I don't think I've ever seen anyone really explain this before, but as someone that did drug trafficking investigations literally against Mexico, I can speak about this in great detail. But that historically has always been the clashing heads when it comes to doing drug cases as a American law enforcement official. Okay, let's go ahead and cover El Mencho real quick, okay? As you guys know, he got couple of days ago. Here he is. Nemesio, I didn't even know that was his first name. Ruben Oseguero Cervantes, okay, commonly known to his alias El Mencho, is a Mexican drug lord and head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, an organized crime group based in Jalisco. He was the most wanted person in Mexico and one of the most wanted in the United States at the time of his death. The U.S. government and Mexican government were offering rewards up to $15 million and Mexican $300 million, respectively, for information leading to his arrest. He was wanted for drug trafficking, organized crime, involvement in illegal possession of firearms. El Mencho was allegedly responsible for coordinating global drug trafficking operations under his command. The CJNG became one of Mexico's leading criminal organizations, born into poverty in the state of Michoacan. El Mencho grew avocados and dropped out of primary school before immigrating illegally to the U.S. in the 1980s. After being arrested several times, he was deported to Mexico in the early 90s. It worked for the Millennial Cartel. So this guy, and I talked about this with my brother, but I guess a lot of you guys didn't see it because a lot of you niggas were asking me, bro, cover the Mexican stuff. I literally covered this with my brother, but I will go really quick over this again. When I was an agent, I had a meth case. I had a crystal methamphetamine case. And the organization that I was investigating was importing their Mexican meth from Michoacan, from these dudes, okay? And the reason why meth from Mexico is imported is because the precursor ingredients, right, for meth are heavily regulated in the United States, right? Like Sudafed and everything else like that. So what ends up happening is the methamphetamine here in the United States isn't very potent. It sucks. Very low quality. We're talking like 40-50% purity, right? But in Mexico, where there's like no regulation because criminals run everything, right? They're able to make meth freely, and they got full-on meth labs down there, full-on meth labs. And what ends up happening is the crystal methamphetamine that the Mexicans produce is way higher quality, way higher quality. So what ends up happening is they just take the market over when it comes to crystal meth. When I was on the border, a kilo of methamphetamine was somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000 a kilo, 10 to 20,000. I don't know what the prices are now. Obviously, drug prices go up and down significantly based on economics, how hard law enforcement is going, etc. But this guy, man, I mean, dude, I knew about this guy when I was working for the feds myself. I had a case that was linked to him. So this guy was intimately tied into lots of criminal activity. And in 86, I guess he had come into the United States, So a Metro crossed the U.S. border several times during the 1980s under other aliases. The DEA and Mexican investigators believe that it was during this time he became involved in methamphetamine production and trade in Redwood City along his brother-in-law, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia. So, and then he got arrested and deported a couple of times, which, isn't abnormal for crooks. So some new details emerged around this stuff.
I do want to get to the latest on the ongoing violence over. Right now, I do want to get to the latest on the.
Also, it was U.S. intelligence were the ones that provided the info to get Mencho. And guess where he was when he got caught? With some bitch. Bro, some old chick got this. These thoughts will be the end of you, dude. I'm telling you.
Ongoing violence over in Mexico. Here's a look at just some of the video showing it all play out over the last several days. I believe this is from yesterday. The U.S. State Department urging Americans who are in Mexico to shelter in place in areas where the violence erupted. Now, the violence comes in the wake of the capture and of notorious cartel leader El Mencho. We are also learning from the Associated Press that it was surveillance of a romantic partner that helped the Mexican armed forces track him down. Both Mexico and the
OnlyFans chick. Let me see if I can find her, bro.
U.S. spent years tracking El Mencho, with military investigators finally identifying and following a trusted associate of the cartel leader. Now, there is a lot to explain about what all of this means, what happened afterward, and what the future holds.
And I'll tell you guys, when I was on the job, one of the easiest ways to track is through their kids and their families, man. So let me apparently this is the girl. I don't know if she lined them up or she was cooperating, but they were definitely tracking her. So whether it was known or unbeknownst to her. So it goes here, the world's most powerful drug lord El Mencho. He didn't fall in a war. Rivals didn't get him. DEA, CIA couldn't nab him. He fell because he wanted to see his lover, an girl. Then he was tracked, exposed, and killed. Some say she betrayed him. Some say she was followed. Some say she was unknowingly tracked. Doesn't matter. Empires collapse for one reason: lack of self-control. A man must learn to have control over his desires. Yeah. And boom. So this is the chick right here. Let me see if I could actually know if Mario Newfall posted it. Let me give me one sec, chat. Let me find. Oh, look at this shit. Mexican soldier fresh off the El Mencho op in Jalisco.
Estoy bien, estoy bien. Mira, güey, nomás se me quedó aquí la puta ojiva, hija de su puta madre, güey. Casi me carga la verga, ¿viste? Mira, me pelaron la verga, güey.
¿Tiraste?
Sí, güey, aventé, güey. No mames, güey.
¿Te bajaron todos?
Yeah, guys, it'd be like that in Mexico, bro. In Mexico, it's the military fighting these guys. It's the military. regular cops are not fighting these guys these guys, that's how powerful they are. Bro's got like these cartels guys have military weapons. Like the Zetas, for example, when I was investigating them, all of them were former Mexican Marines. All of them. So it was absolutely nuts, dude. Okay, let's see here. CJNG unleashed their elite Deltas unit, straight up named after Delta Force, against the Mexican government. Bro, craziness, bro. The drug cartels are paramilitary groups, chat. Absolutely crazy, bro. Mexico's a different world. Okay, so here we go. El Mencho, the most feared cartel boss in the Western Hemisphere, reportedly spent his last 24 hours alive with an adult content creator, not in a bunker, not planning his secession with a girl from the man dodged DA, the Mexican military and CIA for 15 years, died like a rock star anyway. I don't know if he died like a rock star, but they definitely tracked him through that chick for sure, bruh. Back in June 2020, CJNG government ambushed then Mexico City police chief Harfuk, and then he blamed El Mencho directly. He got hit 3 times, but he survived. And here he is with Scheinbaum, the president of Mexico. So that's how they found him, guys. They found him through an old chick.
I do want to bring in Connor Pfeiffer, Senior Director of Government Relations for FDD Action. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Of course. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, well, first off, I wanted to ask you if you could kind of overall break down the situation that's taking place on.
Please cover F-35 American pilot charged with espionage training Chinese fighters as VAR right now? Really?
On the ground there in Mexico, because there are so many different nuances to all of this.
Of course, Josh, it's great to be with you. So the reason you're seeing widespread violence right now in different parts of Mexico after El Mencho's killing is because the Jalisco cartel, which El Mencho led and is the most powerful cartel in Mexico, is taking out retaliation in response to El Mencho's killing. And so in areas of Mexico where the Jalisco cartel has significant control, think Jalisco and other areas in kind of central Mexico, for instance, that's where you're seeing the most violence. It's unclear how long the violence will take place. You've got a leadership succession to be determined for the cartel, and as well, the Mexican armed forces are beefing up security and trying to prevent additional blockades of highways, burning of cars, and some of the other violence we've seen. But this is kind of an expected reaction in the past when key narco leaders like El Chapo were captured. You've seen this similar reaction from other cartels. But what I want to underscore for your viewers is this is a massive victory for the United States and Mexico. In El Mencho. Again, he led the most.
Well, the reality, yeah, getting rid of him is one thing, but the thing is that someone else is going to take. There's going to be a power vacuum, and someone else is just going to take over. That's how it's always been, unfortunately. One cartel boss dies, his cousin, his relative, one of them takes over. It's kind of how it's always been.
Most powerful cartel in Mexico. He has American blood on his hands. His cartel has trafficked fentanyl that has hundreds of thousands of Americans in overdose deaths in the past decade. And so this is a good day for the United States, but at the same time, we have to be cognizant of the violence that could follow because of how it's destabilized the cartel.
There's going to be hella violence, bro. I've already seen all kinds of clips of people getting shot and attacked and everything.
It's also important to note that our different affiliates across the country here,
if you're watching on YouTube,
talked to several of their local citizens who are trapped, so to speak, there in Mexico watching all of this unfold. How safe is it for Americans right now who are in Mexico? Is it safe in any way?
Josh, I think for people who are currently in Mexico or considering travel to Mexico, they should consult the State Department, which has been putting out regular updates, not only for the whole country, but also for specific areas of Mexico, specific cities, specific states, and the State Department can provide the best information as to the current status of those areas. I think overall, though, the violence has been restricted to certain areas, and so it's like every city in the country is seeing this kind of violence, if that makes sense.
as we kind of watch all of this continue to play out here, what are we hearing from Mexican leaders? How are they responding to the security, economic pressures, all of that?
So President Sheinbaum and her security minister, Omar Harfuch, and as well as the head of the military yesterday gave additional details on the operation and said it's the Mexican government's priority to bring security back under control and do their best to stop further violence in the aftermath of the. One thing that's going to be important in the coming days is for the Trump administration to continue to work with the Mexican government to take advantage of this opportunity. Right now, the Jalisco cartel is scattered and is in significant chaos. And one thing I think it's important for your viewers to know as well is the other major cartel in Mexico, the Sinaloa cartel, which is what El Chapo led before he was captured. They're in the middle of a civil war right now because of the capture of El Mayo in 2024. And so right now, both major cartels in Mexico are not in a strong position. And so this is an opportunity to double down, both for the Mexican government and the U.S. government, to double down on efforts to dismantle these cartel networks and hurt their leadership. And so they're able to traffic fewer drugs and commit less violence, both in the United States and in Mexico.
Talking about the U.S. there, does all of this kind of impact anything about the relationship there between the U.S. and Mexico?
It's clear from what the Mexican and U.S. governments have said after the operation that U.S. intelligence and planning was critical as part of Mexico's.
Absolutely. And remember, guys, the reason why we're able to go more aggressive is when Donald Trump came in, Donald Trump set a precedent that we're going to go hard on crime and go hard on drug cartels. So when he said that, hey, we're going to go hard on these cartels and put them on, make them foreign terrorist organizations. Now you can use the full brunt of like the military and the intelligence agencies to go after these guys, right? Before, right? So drug trafficking, traditionally in America has always been like a law enforcement function, right? It's like law enforcement deals with drug traffickers, whatever. Law enforcement doesn't have access or the ability to tap into certain resources that intelligence agencies do. Why? Because intelligence and law enforcement are two different things. Intelligence, their goal is to get information and intelligence, right? Hence the word, to put their country in a better position against another. Espionage. And everything that you do is typically classified. So law enforcement functions differently because with law enforcement, what ends up happening is they're trying to get evidence of criminal activity so that they can take that evidence and put it in front of a courtroom to prosecute someone. That evidence is going to be showed by regular people that are sitting on a jury that don't have a clearance. Does that make sense? So since you're gathering evidence to be publicly discovered and shown in a open court in the United States, you're not dealing with classified stuff. And this is where law enforcement and intelligence agencies kind of butt heads because the CIA, NSA, these agencies, I'll be honest with y'all, they break the law all the time to conduct their operations. With law enforcement, they don't have the same latitude to make shit happen. So since there's these two different, they have two different methodologies, intelligence, law enforcement. Law enforcement operate in the light, intelligence operate in the black. Classified stuff here, law enforcement sensitive here. Discoverable in a courtroom for law enforcement, not discoverable in a courtroom for CIA. Doing illegal versus not doing illegal for the most part. So intelligence agencies, right? For this reason, intelligence agencies had a very limited purview on how much they can help on drug trafficking investigations. You got intelligence, you got law enforcement, right? Intelligence's job is to collect as much information they can to put their country in a better position, right? And have leverage over other countries. Meanwhile, law enforcement's job is to gather evidence to present in an open court. Law enforcement typically operates in the light because it's all discoverable. CIA does not, or intelligence agencies do not. Now, it's because of this disparity in how they operate that historically speaking, whenever you went after drug traffickers, intelligence agencies were not really able to help you too much, right? So when I had a big drug case myself, right, I could contact the intelligence agencies, right? But the problem when I would contact the intelligence agencies is they can only give me limited information because they don't want to reveal their methods and sources. Because if they give me too much information, it's going to burn their informants. It's going to burn what they got going on. They're operating internationally, right? So historically speaking, intelligence agencies have kind of always had like a kind of hands-off policy when it comes to going after drug traffickers, especially even international drug traffickers. And if they did deal with them, they wouldn't share too much with U.S. law enforcement because they don't want to give up their modes and methods because they know that law enforcement can't deal with classified information in a courtroom. Very important. Even though I was an agent and I had a top secret clearance, right? And I could receive the information, what I could receive versus what I can use to gather evidence in a criminal investigation are two different things, chat. And it's because of this reason why a lot of U.S. law enforcement agencies when it comes to drug trafficking investigations. I'm being very clear. When it comes to terrorism, whatever, that's different. But when it comes to drug trafficking, you cannot use the intelligence agencies as much as you wish you could, because you can't use classified information in a court of law. And I've told you guys this before. Classified information is useless in a criminal investigation. It's completely useless. You can't use it. So since you can't use it, what's the point of having it? And all it does is put you in a bad spot. I'll never forget this. Go back in time a little bit. There was an agent I know. He had a human slugging case, right? And the human slugging case was tied into some terrorist organization out in the Middle East. I forget which one it was. And the case went to trial, right? And they started asking him questions about the case, and he couldn't talk, and he almost himself up on the stand. Like, it was near, they were trying to say, like, oh, this agent's a giglio problem, whatever, which is like, not being forthcoming all the way. And the guy almost got in trouble, bro. So they had to go to headquarters, go to the other agency that had the information, get it declassified so he could talk about it in court. But in the meantime, he almost himself up. So that is why, classified information is useless, bro. So now that you guys understand how classified information and drug trafficking organizations used to work, and U.S. law enforcement, that whole trifecta, once Trump came into office, he designated them as terrorist organizations. That was the key. Once you designate a criminal organization as a terrorist organization, now the intelligence agencies can take their gloves off and actually help law enforcement. Does that make sense? Give me ones if that makes sense, guys. I don't think I've ever seen anyone really explain this before. But as someone that did drug trafficking investigations literally against Mexico, literally, because I was in Laredo, Texas, I can speak about this in great detail. But that historically has always been the clashing heads when it comes to doing drug cases as a American law enforcement official. So that's how it goes. Let's get back to it. Getting ones, everybody make. All right, if you're confused, give me a 2 why you're confused. If you're confused, give me a 2 why.
Efforts to undertake the operation. So it shows the importance of stronger security cooperation between the United States and Mexico. Under the Trump administration and Mexico's recently new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, you see much stronger security cooperation than you saw in the past. And that's really important because you can actually make tangible gains against these criminal groups when the U.S. and Mexico are working closely together. And so I think it's a reaffirmation of the importance of the Trump administration strategy of putting constant pressure, economic as well as security pressure, on the Mexican government to see outcomes like this.
What should everyday people be paying close attention to as this does unfold? As we mentioned, the State Department is putting out updates, kind of providing information to folks who were either planning to travel or are there in Mexico right now. But what should the average American be paying attention to, and why?
So in terms of travel, like you mentioned, the State Department's the best resource. In terms of understanding what's happening and why this matters, paying attention to what the developments look like in the coming weeks and months in terms of, are we able to capture more high-ranking cartel officials? Is the Mexican government able to make some more tangible gains here against the Jalisco cartel or against other cartels and criminal groups in Mexico? Obviously, I mentioned the 2 largest cartels in Mexico, the Jalisco and Sinaloa cartels, but there are many others across the country, and some of whom operate more on the U.S. border, which is a potentially bigger impact in some ways for U.S. security. And so following where the Mexican government, where the U.S. government are making announcements, working together, that's where the opportunities really are here.
All right, Connor Pfeiffer, thank you so much for being here with us and helping to break it down. Again, there's a lot going on. There are a lot of developments that are happening, so I'm sure we're going to have you back very soon as we continue to track all of this. Now, we covered a lot of ground, but is there anything else that maybe we forgot that you want to make sure to mention here before I let you go?
I think one thing for people to keep in mind is that the Mexicans have large, important cartel leaders before, El Chapo and others in the past. The key for making sure that the gains against the cartels are lasting is really reforming Mexico's law enforcement, their judicial system, and their policing capacity. So it's not just about taking out the kingpins. We also have to make sure we make gains on the ground, and also we take on corruption as well from the cartels.
Connor, thank you again for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
How exactly was the world's richest drug lord finally captured? Well, it actually took both U.S. and Mexican intelligence working together, and their strategy was the exact same tactic they used to find Bin Laden. The trick is follow the courier, and you get the prize.
And of course, they were able to do that because they were designated as terrorists.
They tracked down his associate and kept tabs on one of his many girlfriends. Because yes, this 59-year-old guy somehow had a love interest. Maybe because he is richer than the Sinaloa drug lords with $20 billion at his disposal. For the longest time, the guy was a total ghost. He stayed entirely off the US radar by intentionally keeping his operations away from American citizens. So how did it all finally end? It happened at a cabin. And even when he was completely surrounded by military helicopters, he was still protected by his own heavily armed henchmen, rocking RPGs and armored vehicles. And all hell broke loose when the Mexican Special Forces started attacking with guns blazing. The operation that brought down Mexico's most wanted man didn't happen in a bustling city. It happened in a fortress. The primary firefight, the exact moment the Mexican armed forces went head-to-head with heavily armed CJNG operatives, fatally wounded many of the drug lord's members. This is located in the western state of Jalisco, but Tapalpa is a rugged mountainous municipality about a 2-hour drive southwest of the state capital, Guadalajara. For the cartel, this wasn't just a hideout. It was a tactical stronghold, utilizing the harsh terrain as a natural defense against the military. But taking down the kingpin was only the beginning. Almost immediately following the raid, the CJNG unleashed hell. A massive, highly coordinated wave of retaliation exploded against government forces and public infrastructure. This violent pushback, often referred to as narco blockades, spread like wildfire across the country. The violence hit hardest in Jalisco, engulfing major cities like Guadalajara, Zapopan, and the international tourist hub of Puerto Vallarta, where the chaos even spilled into the airports, throwing tourists into a panic and forcing immediate flight cancellations. The cartel's fury wasn't contained to just one state. The violence rapidly bled into Michoacan, Guanajuato, Colima, Tamaulipas, Nayarit, Zacatecas, Guerrero.
Tamaulipas is the state that I was mostly involved with because we had the Zetas were there in Nuevo Laredo, which is in the state of Tamaulipas.
And Aguascalientes. In a desperate bid to paralyze the region and exact revenge, drug lords members hijacked civilian vehicles and semi-trucks, setting them ablaze to completely block major highways. They torched local businesses and gas stations.
Now, this is what I'll say, guys. Never mind. Fuck it.
Engaging in brutal, open street shootouts with local and federal security forces. But how did he become the richest cartel in Mexico? For years, he was a ghost. A phantom who commanded an empire of blood, methamphetamine, and billions of dollars. But on Sunday, February 22nd, 2026, the ghost was finally cornered. Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, better known to the world as El Mencho. He was the supreme leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. He didn't just run a cartel. He commanded a heavily armed paramilitary force that brought the Mexican state to its knees. But how did a former farmer and deported immigrant build a $20 billion war chest? And what exactly happened in the violent, fiery raid that finally took his life? To understand his explosive end, we have to look at his quiet beginning. In the 1980s, Mencho was just an undocumented immigrant in the United States, working the marijuana fields of California. He was arrested, served time in a U.S. federal prison, and was deported back to Mexico at the age of 30. That deportation was the match that lit the powder keg. He joined the Milenio drug lords in Michoacan, building a reputation as a calculating, ruthless enforcer. When that cartel fractured, Mencho didn't just pick up the pieces, he forged a new terrifying weapon, the CJNG. Mencho was a master strategist. While rival cartels like Sinaloa bled themselves dry in civil wars, especially after the capture of El Chapo and the recent fall of El Mayo, Mencho capitalized on the chaos. He pivoted away from traditional routes and went all in on methamphetamine and fentanyl, focusing on highly lucrative...
I'm telling you, man. When I had my meth case, this guy was the main dude, bro. He was the main dude. They got what they call it super Mexican meth. Super Mexican meth.
Markets in Europe and Asia. This strategy kept him slightly under the radar of American politics, while quietly amassing a staggering $20 billion empire. Former DEA agents claim the CJNG has vastly more money than the Sinaloa cartel ever did. But unlimited wealth buys unlimited arrogance. A couple of years ago, his phone was hacked right while he was having a conversation with the police. If you don't want your phone and emails to get compromised like that, you should get this military-grade VPN. Local police commander, codenamed Delta 1, or was doing his job a little too well.
Delta 1. Hey, ¿quién habla? Mira bien, hijo de tu... Soy Mencho.
I remember this phone call.
Güey. Relaja tu gente a la verga. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tus partidas, si no te voy a partir tu madre, tienes toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo identificado 30 güeyes. Hasta tus...
Yeah, and guys, this is how drug traffickers talk to the police in Mexico, bro. Yo, niggas wear there's a reason why the Mexican Marines wear masks. It's not even the cops that go after these guys. It's the military, dude. Imagine your criminals are so bad, the military has to go after them. Bruh. Oh yeah, another fun fact. Mexicans love to use the word way. Hey, we a la verga, que onda? That's how they talk. Dude, I've listened to so many Mexican conversations when I was on the border. It's crazy, bro. But yeah, those are the telltale signs they're Mexican when they speak Spanish.
Ya está, señor, ahorita los bajo. Oh, no cuelgues, hijo de la verga, te tengo ubicados en No, no le estoy colgando, le estoy diciendo, ahorita los bajo. Póngase bien las pilas, güey. ¿Qué se le cuesta ser amigo? Uno no se mete con ustedes para que se pasen de verga. No, señor, ahorita yo se las bajo. Pongan, mire, revíremeles a todos los hijos de su madre, porque todos agarran dinero y son buenos de puercos. Sí, es lo que me están diciendo. ¿Se me ponen a tiros o tú eres el primero que vas a marchar por ellos, León? No, señor. ¿Vale? No, señor, no se trata de eso. Váyase a la verga, porque aquí los vergazos están al 220, ya se la sabe. Y miedo no hay. No, señor, no se trata de eso.
Said I'll split blood at a moment's notice. You already know what's up. Bro, could you imagine calling the FBI and telling them that shit? Bruh.
Ahorita yo lo sé. Entonces, sí.
Cops saying, no, sir, there's no problem.
Tiene la amistad, sí va a tener un amigazo, si no, a su madre a la verga.
This guy was a fucking menace, bro.
No, yo sé, señor. Ya estoy hasta la verga de que no entiendan, loco. Señor, usted me conoce, usted sabe que yo soy amistad. Pues por eso me extraña, yo te entiendo, güey, pero pues no mames, yo sé que tienes gente y la familia, verga, póngase las putas pilas.
Well, that's why I'm so surprised you blank. I understand you got people and family to take care of, but get your blank together.
Yo lo sé, señor. No quiero que me apagues este teléfono. Después te voy a marcar, güey. A ver si no se relajaron a la verga, ¿eh? No, ahorita le voy a marcar. A todos en general.
Bruh, this is going in.
Güey, relájenme los vergas, por favor. Ahorita le voy a marcar de otro número a este número que me está marcando. No, este ya no le vuelvas a marcar. Yo le marco cuando yo pueda. Ándale, pues. Pero no me lo apague porque lo voy a entender como negatividad. No, señor. Ahorita le mando un mensaje de otro número para que me marque los... Órale, pues, Melón. Ahí les quiero eso, que se relaje. Sí, señor. Usted me conoce. Usted sabe que hay respeto y hay ilusión. Nada más aquí... Hasta igualmente. De aquí para allá también. Ahí disculpen por las malas palabras. Aquí los muchachos son los que están allá y usted yo se los saludo. Ahora pues, ahí le encargo. Ándale, sí. Ahí relájenmelos a todos. Dígale que va de parte mía. Claro que sí, señor. Ya está. Ándale.
But how did the Mexican and U.S. intel caught him?
Hold on one sec, chat.
Well, you follow the girlfriend. Yes, literally follow the girlfriend. Intel identified a trusted cartel associate with a very specific job, moving one of El Mencho's love interest. They placed this courier under strict, round-the-clock surveillance, waiting for him to make a move. And eventually he did. Agents tracked the associate as he escorted the girlfriend to a secret rendezvous point. The trail led them exactly where El Mencho felt safest. The heavily guarded, secluded cabin compound in Tapalpa, a picturesque mountain resort town about 80 miles outside of Guadalajara. On Saturday, February 21st, 2026, the girlfriend arrived at the compound. Mexican military commanders had eyes on the target, but they didn't rush in. They played the waiting game. They held their positions, watching silently until she safely departed the property later that day. Her departure confirmed what they needed to know. El Mencho and his
Bro, they always line you up with a chick, bro. It's cooked.
heavily armed security detail were still inside. To pull this off, the military had to maintain absolute secrecy. In the early pitch-black hours of Sunday, February 22nd, the trap was sprung. The moment they breached the perimeter, all hell broke loose. The CG&G didn't just have standard rifles. The compound was a fortress defended by armored vehicles and military-grade rocket launchers specifically designed to blast military helicopters out of the sky. When the Mexican Army Special Forces breached the perimeter, a fierce, sustained firefight erupted. The air was instantly thick with the deafening roar of 50 caliber machine guns and the shattering blasts of rocket-propelled grenades. 4 cartel members forming the inner security ring were instantly in the courtyard. 3 Mexican Special Forces soldiers were severely wounded as they pushed through the barrage. As his defenses collapsed, the 59-year-old Kingpin attempted to retreat. But where was he during the raid? Tactical reports place El Mencho in the west wing of the safe house, a fortified section of the compound likely intended to shield him or provide access to an escape route while his guards held off the assault. But the military's push was too fast and too overwhelming. Amidst the chaotic crossfire, Mexican special forces laid down heavy suppressing fire using their standard issue FX-05 5.5 6mm assault rifles. High-velocity rounds tore through the reinforced doors and drywall of the west corridor. Caught in the fatal funnel of the hallway, the Kingpin was hit. Struck multiple times in the torso by the 5.5 6mm rounds.
Oh, wow. He got hit by strays?
El Mencho collapsed onto the floor of the west wing. Critically wounded and bleeding heavily, his remaining security detail was neutralized. We also made a deep dive into the sea, air, and land components of the nuclear triad, so subscribe for more videos to not miss a beat.
Man. But yeah, cook, bro. Absolutely cook.